You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello and welcome to another show of Business Wealth Impact. Today we have Eric Malka, who's an entrepreneur, brand builder, investor, and published author with more than 30 years experience in luxury consumer goods. As co-founder and former CEO of The Art of Shaving, he's a pioneer of the luxury men's grooming industry, leading the company from start up to international expansion. And in 2009, The Art of Shaving was acquired by Gillette, Procter Gamble. In 2014, he established Strategic Brand Investments, a private equity fund specialized in helping early-stage entrepreneurs develop brands and grow businesses. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So great to have you here because we are going to talk about something a little bit contrarian. We all love that, don't we? I would love to hear more about what we were chatting about before, about not failing in business and not making too many mistakes to succeed. So let's hear more about that philosophy.
Sure. That's, as I was writing my book, I did a lot of research and I stumbled onto statistics that were really incredible to me, at least, that, 99.3% of startups will not achieve $10 million in revenue. And 50% of them will be shut down within 10 years or 5 years. I mean, the failure rate is extremely high. And then I started realizing that what I had achieved in my career is almost against all odds, right? To go from a startup to building an international brand in 12 years and selling it to a conglomerate is not an easy feat. So it made me not only appreciate what I had been able to achieve, but also, empathize with so many entrepreneurs that are struggling out there. And the question is, why me? What did I do or not do that allowed me to thread that needle? And what lessons can we gain for other entrepreneurs to avoid some of those pitfalls and increase their low odds of succeeding at the game of startup? That's really the premise of it.
So let's hear it, because I'm also extremely puzzled by those numbers every time I hear them. I'm just thinking, how could they all be so wrong in the way they're running a business? What don't they know that's so basic that they're all failing? So maybe you could give us some insight there.
So there's some trends. First of all, I'm going to start by saying that a lot of people are focused on giving advice on how to succeed. And those are really important things to learn. You need to be a magician. As an entrepreneur, we're creating magic. We're creating something that doesn't exist from a blank piece of paper. We're creating businesses. We're really very creative. So you do have to have talent. You do have to have hard work, persistence, determination, all the things that we know make for a successful entrepreneurs. And what is missing in that is the other side of that coin, which is avoiding pitfalls and avoiding failure, which is what 99% of entrepreneurs are facing. Either they're failing or they're struggling or they're suffering, right? So you need to both create magic and avoid the pitfalls at the same time, because if you make too many mistakes along the way, nobody is going to see your talent and your magic come to life. You won't see the light of day, right? So some of the things that I notice, some of the basic things I notice are primarily premature business scaling, right? We've all seen those business plans that go from 0 to 100 in 3 or 5 years. I mean, it does happen. They're rarities. I've never seen one, but it is not impossible to achieve incredible success in 5 years. But most people will tell you it takes 10 to 20 years to make a business from scratch really materialize, right? So premature business scaling means not only are we running a sprint instead of a marathon, but we're also trying to scale a business that is not ready to be scaled. You need to create a strong foundation, especially in a startup, right? You need to have a you need to have certain elements in place before you start really scaling. But the whole notion, especially with the digital age where scaling has become a different game now, they want entrepreneurs want to scale on day one. They want to bypass. They want to skip. They want to cut corners. They want to skip all those steps, right? They
Mm.
want to just launch the rocket ship. They don't want to build it.
Hmm.
So that's a big pitfall. It's a proprietary methodology that I have cultivated called crawl, walk, run, and fly. And
Hmm.
basically, they're the four stages of the evolution of a startup towards either incredible success or an exit.
Hmm.
And there are rules to abide by. If you try to go from crawling to running, chances are you're going to be falling flat on your face. It doesn't mean you have to crawl for 10 years or walk for 10 years. Everybody's journey is different.
Mm.
You can, how much time you spend in each of the phases is individual to each entrepreneur,
Mm.
but skipping phases is absolutely one of the biggest pitfalls.
Okay. So, more specifically, because that's a general thing, more specifically, what are some of the actual mistakes they're making at the beginning where they should be building on a foundation rather than overextending? Because I see a lot of startups overextending. They're hiring a bunch of people and then they run out of money. So, what specifically?
Yeah, running out of cash is a symptom. When you're starting a business, I mean, you really don't know anything about who your customer is, how your products perform, your supply chain, your people, your team, your talents, your financial situation. So all these basic elements, it's really why I call it crawl, walk, run, fly, because you really want to crawl in the beginning. You want to go so slowly that you can have time to really understand your business model. And the business model is really, how do I attract and retain customers profitably in a way that I can write a process about it, right? Once I
Mm.
figure that out, once I have a scalable business model, then I'm ready to start picking up steam. And
Mm.
sometimes that takes a while to build. So you have the product side, you have the people side, you have your economic engines. All these elements are part of the foundational work. And if you're in the branding world like I am, you really have to nurture that brand in the beginning. What do we believe in? What do we stand for? How are we differentiated from everyone else in the world? Why do people care about what we do? What is our target audience? Who is our target audience? Who are we serving? All these basic questions. And anytime you waste in the early days, you will make up tenfold when you're ready to really go for it. There's also a lack of business. Sometimes I find that there's a lack of business acumen or industry acumen in entrepreneurs starting a business. We tend to start businesses because we aspire to be maybe financially free. And we are very good at a certain aspect of that, what sometimes we call ourselves technician. A
Mm.
lot of entrepreneurs are not built to be great CEOs. They are CEOs because there's an application of one and I'm making the decision on that, right?
Mm.
So they come in sometimes not being fully rounded to really take on the mission at hand, right? They could be really good at marketing or they could be really good at product development, but it takes, a CEO to really build a company. So some of that acumen might be missing. And, other pitfalls, I mean, giving up too much equity, trying to raise money right
Mm.
off the bat. I personally feel that one of the greatest blessings I've had with my success was that I was bootstrapped in the beginning. I started the business by selling my car. And I know from experience that the two failures I've had in my business careers were when I had more resources available to me at the onset of the business, which caused me to be a little bit more arrogant in my speed to market, right?
Mm.
So I think bootstrapping is a great discipline to allow you to crawl before you walk.
Right, because you're more frugal then with the funds. You're more frugal because, well,
It
you know,
slows you down.
it's almost like that thing I've realized when I have one item, like one specific item of clothing, like I don't know, a specific sports item, I don't lose it. But when I go buy a 10 pack, I lose like nine. Do you know what I mean? Like socks. Like, do you know what I mean?
We become sloppy, right?
You get sloppy because you have an abundance of them. You're like, okay, how come we bought this big pack of whatever and we lost them all? They whatever. But when you have one pair of a specific type of, I don't know, that you need first, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah, of
then
course.
you don't lose them. So I sort of realized that with our shopping, that when we bought a bunch of stuff, we were more careless with it,
That's a great example. It's a
right?
great example. Yeah, it's if I can use another analogy, it's like I give you a slow car to drive. I mean, that's a lot safer than if I give you a Ferrari on your first day of driving and you're going 100 miles an hour. You're probably going to
Mm,
crash,
mm,
right? So it's the same concept, and it's not a sexy thing to say, frankly,
mm-mm.
to tell people slow down in the beginning.
Slow business, not fast business. Not the fast company. The slow. We should start we should start a publication, the slow company, instead of the fast company.
Well, I speak to a lot of successful people and also to budding entrepreneurs that are starting out. And every successful person will tell you it took them years to succeed and they had luck along the way. And there's certain things that keep coming up. When I see a business plan of a startup, I mean, they think they're going to be 30% profitability by year 5 and they're going to be growing 200% year over year, and
Mhm.
it happens. It could happen. It's not
Mm.
physically impossible, but it's not a model to follow.
Yeah, don't you love those plans where people say, "We know now next year I'm going to be," and and I'm thinking, well, that's a great piece of paper you just showed me. It's just all la la land, and because they said so, and I love the positive expectation. I call it positive expectancy. So, what are some of the things specifically you did where you did not make these mistakes? You kept it slow. You did deep research into your customers. You didn't take too many on at the first. You got to understand them first. Got a little bit, tiny bit
Yeah.
profitable, and then inched up. Is that what you did?
Well, we went pretty fast, but we were extremely lucky in some ways. First of
Mm,
all, we sold our car for $12,000 to open our first store. So we bootstrapped. Secondly, we were in the luxury men's grooming category, which was non-existent. So there was not a clear channel for us to follow. So we opened our
mm,
own stores. So instead, what I realized looking back on it is that I have a very simple philosophy of using every obstacle as an opportunity and using every problem is an opportunity in disguise. So having a category that was extremely non-existent forced us to go into our own retail channel instead of distributing
mm,
our products to third-party retailers. Back then, the internet was not yet a thing. So we also became very lucky in the sense that the New York Times wrote an article about our little shop 6 months after we started the business, and our business blew up tenfold. Our sales blew up tenfold. So all of a sudden, we had all this money to grow. And what did we do as naive entrepreneurs? We decided to open a more prominent location where there was a lot more foot traffic, and we chose Madison Avenue in Midtown. And that became a humongous success for us. And within 2 years of opening the business, we were generating over $750,000 in profits annually.
mm,
And that gave us a tremendous amount of fuel to
mhm.
grow organically the brand. So when you think about going from our kitchen table to selling a globally recognized men's grooming brand to Procter Gamble in 12 years, we went pretty fast and stars aligned really, really well for us.
You did have luck. The
A
article,
lot of
that was
luck.
it. Yeah.
There's probably a dozen situations that I can point to, stories that show how incredibly lucky we were. But then, as you peel the layer of the onion, you realize that our actions caused these
Yes.
lucky breaks, but they were not guaranteed. We were at the right time, we were at the right place at the right time. We created the right product that had a connection with the consumer on a very deep emotional level.
Mm,
My wife, who at the time was only 22 years old, was a gifted product developer and branding person.
mm,
We discovered that as we navigated. So we threaded that needle
mm,
out of great instincts. It has to be said that it was my fourth business.
mm.
And my third business wiped me out. So I had a great
Ah.
failure under my belt that taught me things that were instrumental to my success with the fourth company.
Okay, what did you learn with the failure? Let's hear that.
Well, a little bit of what we talked about already, but it was more unconscious than I'm able to express today. But in my third business, I was very, I believed in my idea a lot, and I put in 100% of the investment. Everything I had up to that point accumulated. I put it into the business until, 6, 9 months in, I realized that I had made some major mistakes in overextending myself before really testing the thesis of the business. A little bit of what we're talking about.
Mm,
I tried to run before I crawled and walked. And that was really, it caused me great insecurities as an entrepreneur, having such a failure. I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to achieve my goals.
oh.
I'm not going to bash myself, but I felt really like I was never going to get there.
You must have felt pretty down because you now, you have this big success under your belt. But I can imagine going back in time, you failed in that business. You didn't know what the future was going to hold. I mean, it must be quite demoralizing.
But again, I used that to my advantage. Looking back on it, I said to my wife when we decided that we were ready to start a new business in New York City in 96, I said to her, I just want to start the smallest
Mm,
business I can. I want to
mm,
start really small. And that really, looking back on it, was think big,
mm,
start small.
mm,
And that's really one of my core philosophies in business, is to really have, the vision is individual to each
mm,
person, right? The unique benefit of being an entrepreneur is we can decide what we want.
mm,
Do we want to be a mom and pop little business around the corner in our neighborhood that gives us a nice income? Or do we want to become the next Amazon business? That's entirely up to you. Now, you should know that the higher your aspirations are, there's a direct inverted correlation to your odds, right? So if you want $1 billion business, your odds are 0.00006%.
right.
If you want to just have a nice little business, your odds go up dramatically. So you should be aware that what you want to achieve has a price attached to it. It's
Mm,
not going to be a walk in the park. So the higher your aspirations are, the lower the odds. So for me,
right.
to think big but to start small is really a game changer.
Right, and also the other thing you're talking about is lifestyle. Do you just want a doable business where you're living okay, and you take off more vacation than other people, maybe not, but with those big businesses, that's your whole life.
That's your life.
It's your whole life, and you have to be a workaholic, and you have to like being a workaholic,
Yeah.
right? Right.
Yeah.
Now, personally, I love working. However, I do like to take vacations and do other things, but I like working. I wouldn't say I'm a workaholic anymore, but I used to be. And you did not get where you are because you just said, no, we're just going to, take our vacations every month, dear. You were a beast, obviously, to build that. And by the way, I was in New York. I moved to New York 2 years after you started that business. And I remember your shop.
Oh, thank you. That's
I
cool.
never went in it, but I remember seeing it.
Look, I call it a reptilian survival obsession of mine. I had a difficult adolescent years, And I really had a chip on my shoulder. That's one of my topics in my book. And that chip on my shoulder made me want to prove the world wrong about me. Yes, I wanted to be financially not poor. I didn't enjoy being poor. I don't think, a
Neither
lot
did
of people
I.
do. But when I look back on it, it wasn't really the money that was driving me. It was that reptilian obsession to succeed and to prove the world wrong about who I am.
Mm,
And that's why I started working when I was 16 years old. And when I started The Art of Shaving with Miriam, we were in our 20s, and overnight, our social life went into a screeching halt.
mm.
We were living in New York before starting the business. We had parties at our house. We had lots of friends. We used to hang out as soon as we started The Art of Shaving, Miriam and I were like, okay, we're
Buckle
on.
down. Yeah.
Buckle down. This is all, there's no balance.
Yes.
There's no life work
No,
balance.
there is none. Because when I got online, well, I had no balance anyway before, but when I restarted my business, I already didn't have a social life, but it was all in. And people were like, don't you ever? I said, I don't need to. I don't want to. I've spent a lot of my life having fun. So,
That's right.
I started late. Okay. So tell us a little bit about your story. What brought you here? And you got a little bit of it. You started working when you were 16. So tell us a little bit more about that journey. And you're French, right?
I'm from Morocco, so I'm
French
French
Moroccan.
speaking, French
Mm-hmm.
Moroccan. I grew up in Montreal, Canada, which is also French speaking. Um, my family migrated from Morocco in the 1970s to Canada. That was a first shock to the system. I was 9 years old, and it was very hard to acclimate to a new culture and so forth. Weather was extremely different than I was used to, and within a few years, my father lost his job, and the financial hard times hit our family. My parents divorced, and I quit school at the age of 17. So the community I lived in was very affluent and academic, and I was a weed smoker, high school college dropout, if you will. Um, and I think that started to make me feel that people thought I was never going to amount to much. And I became very disenchanted with my community, with my family life, and with the country I lived in. And I dreamt of America. I watched American TV growing up, and I traveled to the US, and I thought, I told my mother actually when I was 14, I said, one day I'm going to go to America and I'm going to be a successful businessman. And I think she shrugged me up. She shrugged off that whole conversation, as a good parent should when a 14-year-old expresses these things. But I was 17. I was really down and out. I was 17 and I got a Greyhound bus ticket to New York City. $100 in my pocket, very little education, and no green card. So I arrived in New York in 1985, and 24 years later, I sold my company to Procter and Gamble. So that's really the journey. The journey of those
Mm,
24 years is really the fun story. It's a fun story because it ends well, but a lot of people are not so fortunate, and that's really been my passion in this chapter of my career, to really try to give back to the entrepreneurial community. And I do this, through podcast or speaking at universities, investing in businesses, or just coaching
mm,
young entrepreneurs. By young, I mean their businesses. They don't have to be
mm.
young themselves, but the businesses are young.
Right. Well, when I hear stories like yours, I almost feel like you dodged a bullet. Just to, right? It's like
Major dodged a bullet.
major dodge it because it could have gone so many different ways, but
So
you
wrong.
got through it and you had some luck and you worked really hard and your wife was helping you. And the fact that I, you know, have a successful business, I wake up every day and I think, wow, I dodged a bullet, because it's not everybody that can do this. And
Oh
I
my
don't
God.
actually think I had any luck, to be honest. It was sheer, pure grit, which is kind of good for a coach, because they can't say, well, you were really lucky, because I haven't had any breaks. It was all sheer grit.
Yeah, I agree. Even for me, I talk about luck a lot, but I could tell you the same story through grit, determination, real talent, and making smart decisions along the way. But, we got lucky,
Mm,
and I definitely agree with you. I'm extremely grateful for what I have achieved because it's really low, low odds, low
right.
odds.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Huge
I agree.
congratulations. And you did create that whole niche. Nobody thought about anything about men shaving. It was just something they did, right? It wasn't a luxury thing.
You remind me of one of my core philosophies, which is that ideas are simple and execution is everything. And, everybody compliments us on having a brilliant idea. But the reality is, the idea was nothing. I'm not passionate about shaving. I was working in the industry. I needed a job. I got
Mm,
into this industry by accident. I was sent to London. I saw 12 art of shaving stores in the Mayfair area. And
mhm.
I thought, this could work in America. Nobody's done this. So we took an idea that was there for 200 years, simple idea, but the way we brought it to market, the way we brought the idea to life was the magic. It's the
Right.
execution that really made the difference.
Absolutely. I was just thinking that there is that history in England about, but not here. So it's how you interpret it for the American
But
society.
in England, it felt like an antiquated
Mm,
business
yes.
with, it looked so old. It looked like it hadn't been renovated since 1875.
Mm,
So we wanted to bring that to America, but modernize it for that American affluent New York
mm,
consumer. And again, my wife being so brilliant at imagining aesthetics, which is
mm,
not my strength, she really nailed it with
mm.
how we executed on the idea, and then the business side of how do we make deals to get the products on consignment and
Mm.
get the lease when we have no credit in Manhattan, and operate it and set it up in a way that becomes very profitable.
Yes. It's not just luck. Not
It's not
just
just
luck.
luck. No,
Well,
no, no.
good for you. I'm super proud of you, and that's exciting that you managed to create that new niche. So, what's before we head out? What is one bit of advice or philosophy or something you would say to people that are starting startups?
you know um, as I said throughout this podcast, I think, think big. Ask yourself the hardest simple question to answer, which is, what do I want? What do you want? I think it starts from there, right? Before you write your business plan and get going, what do I want? What do I truly want? And that's a 10-year vision, right? What do you want is really the vision of where do I want to be in 10 years? And then the second question is, how do I get there? That's your
Mm,
strategy, right? How am I going to get there? There's no linear path. It's going to be twists and turns, but having a strategy, my motto is having a bad plan is better than no plan at all.
yeah.
And then, you have the tactical. What's my next move, right? So think big, or as big as you want or as small as you want, but really start small so that you can learn how your business and your customers and your products perform before you start to really pick up steam.
Mm. Okay. Well, awesome. That's good. You just keep reiterating that. Be solid at the very beginning and create a good foundation and don't get out of hand. Okay. Well, Eric, thank you so much for turning up today. It was super interesting to hear your philosophies and your journey. And for listeners, thank you for turning up. And I hope you liked this and share and review. And we'll see you on the next show. You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.